Hello everyone, my name is Laura and I'm going to show you guys how to make banana bread. Firstly, we're going to turn on the oven and then we're going to measure out all of the ingredients. Now the oven is turned on to 180 degrees, so that can warm up while we measure everything out. We're going to sift the flour, bicarb and salt into a bowl. So I don't normally sift my ingredients for most things. Generally with cakes I do, because it gives it a lighter texture. And with banana bread sometimes I don't bother either. But for me it doesn't change the texture too much because the bananas weigh it down quite a bit anyway. So I have 10 ounces of plain flour, or in grams it's 285. And here we go. Sieve that into here. And if you do it from a higher height, it means you'll get more air into it. But again, with banana bread, it doesn't matter too much. Sometimes I don't even bother sifting it. And you just tap it gently against your hand and it should all come out very easily. I would always wash your sieves really thoroughly as well, because if you get any bits in your sieve through cooking things like rice, like bacteria can grow and then you have to throw it out. So I definitely clean them very thoroughly after you've used them. There we go. Now we've got bicarbonate of soda and salt. So just make sure you're not using baking powder, because normally you use baking powder for muffins and things, but bicarbonate of soda for banana bread. So we've only got 1 teaspoon of this. There we go. And also half a teaspoon of salt. Normally it brings out the flavour in whatever you're making, but also it makes things taste sweeter than they normally do. So there we go, that's done. Now we're creaming together the butter and the sugar. So we start off with 4 ounces of butter, or 110 grams. I don't normally weigh this because on my butter it's got little diagrams to show you how much to use just on the edge. So if you fold it over like that, you can then see the numbers on the edge and the lines, and then if you just cut straight down, then you get 25 grams, 50 grams, and we're going for 110. It also means when I weigh out the sugar that it doesn't get stuck inside the pan, and means less washing up for me. This we'll use for later, for greasing the pan. So we're just going to cut this up into cubes, quite small, because we're going to cream together the butter and the sugar. Here we are. Now we're going to weigh out the sugar. It says to use caster sugar. I'm going to use golden granulated sugar, only because that's what we have in the cupboard. But it gives it a sort of sweeter, more nutty taste, I find, to caster sugar. But I would definitely use caster sugar for making cakes that are a lot lighter, like Victoria Sponge. But normally if you have fruit or vegetables in your cake, it makes it a lot denser, but more moist, so it depends on what you're going for in your cake. I've got 8 ounces of caster sugar. I always think with recipes that I find online that there's way too much sugar in them compared to what you actually need. Because bananas are quite sweet anyway, I tend to cut down the sugar to about 6 ounces instead of 8, but that's completely up to you. I just find that once it gets to a point with sugar, if you can keep adding more, but it doesn't really affect the flavour of the cake. And we're going to cream it together. So now we're just going to cream together the butter and the sugar. I normally use a tablespoon, just because I feel I can get more leverage with the creaming of it. So you just get a bit of butter and you push it against the edge of the bowl. It's normally easier when you've got a heavier bowl, with the sugar. Cast sugar, it does this a bit quicker because the granules are finer. And sometimes people have butter that they've left out for a bit so that it's softer to cream. or margarine or spread. If you cook with children, this is the bit I'd watch out for, because this is the best tasting bit before it's cooked. Hold the bowl and push the bits of butter and sugar against the edge of the bowl, just like that. Depending on your butter as well, it can seem a lot lighter or darker, and the sugar. You can always swap out the sugar for ones that you can have, like coconut sugar or brown sugar, but it will change the texture and taste of the cake. But be my guest to experiment. And you can use vegan margarine, and you can also use lactose-free milk as well to make your buttermilk. There we are. That's done. So now we're going to break the eggs into here. I've gotten into the habit of cracking my eggs into a small bowl instead, because I did use one that wasn't quite right. There we go. And straight in. Just 2 eggs, and we'll mix that in. I normally switch to using a fork, just because I can whisk up the eggs quite well with the mixture. Just like that. Mix it together. It will look quite grim at this stage. I wouldn't liken it to anything. But all it is egg, sugar and butter. So it's nothing to worry about. Here we go. So now we're going to make ourselves some buttermilk. So now we're going to make some buttermilk. You can buy it, but unfortunately I have no idea where to buy it from. So you put in 85 millilitres of milk into here. And then you can use either vinegar or lemon juice into it, and we need 1.5 teaspoons of it. So what I do to get the juice out of a lemon a bit more is roll it on the table, and then I cut it. Here we go, there's the lemon. And we're just going to put in 1.5 teaspoons. Mix it in. So basically buttermilk is just the byproduct of when butter is made. So the cream is churned up and the liquid that's left is buttermilk. And it's slightly sour and acidic and perfect for making banana bread. And it activates the bicarbonate of soda that we're going to be putting in a little bit. So now we're going to add that into our egg, butter and sugar mixture. Here we are. Mix that round. Looks a bit more like pancake mixture. So now we're going to chop up the bananas. Normally I use about 4 bananas, but it depends on what size they are. These are sort of average size, so normally about 4. And you want them when they're quite ripe. Because what's perfect about this recipe is that when you've got bananas this colour, they're not terribly appetising to eat, although you still can obviously. And so they're perfect to use in banana bread, I find. And also, the more ripe fruit gets, the sweeter it gets. And so it's perfect for making things like cakes, because it adds a natural sweetness, so you don't have to keep adding more and more sugar, which is not great. If you see bits like this, which are look a bit gross, they're not actually that bad. But we're just going to chop away it because it's a bit squidgy. There we are. So now we just get a fork. I normally just use the same one so I don't have to keep washing it up. And then we're just going to press down and mash it up. Should have chosen a bigger plate really, but oh well. Until they're all mashed up, because we want it to be evenly distributed within the cake mixture. Here we are. Here we go. Again, looks very unappetizing, but believe me, when it's in the cake, it will taste really, really good. So now we're going to add this to the milk, butter, sugar mixture. Here we go. Add that all in. Perfect. Just keep mixing it in. And now we're also going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. If you can get the vanilla extract that's more of a syrup, that tastes a lot better, probably because it's more natural. But unfortunately, as most people do, I've only got this vanilla extract, which I'm a bit sceptical about how natural it is. Here we go. And we just want 1 teaspoon. Because although it's very little, or seems very little, it's actually quite strong, so I wouldn't put too much more in that. So now we're going to fold in the flour into this mixture. For cakes like Victoria Sponge and other light cakes, the reason we sift the flour is because we want it to be really light and keep the air in it. And so when you mix it together, you need to fold it very gently like this. For this cake, I don't really bother because for me, it doesn't change the texture of it that much. So I just sort of mix it in like I would with any type of mixture really. Should have really used the other bowl, but hindsight is a very nice thing. Here we are. And it's starting to look more like a batter for cake. And just make sure that it's all incorporated in it. There we are. So now we're going to make some butter. Here we are. As you can see, I've just cut along the edges of this square, so it looks like that. And therefore you should just be able to push it down, and if you lift up the edges, the corners should be in about the same place. There we are. So you just push it straight down and you can move the little sections. And you just smooth out each of the sizes because you've greased it well. It should just sit quite evenly. You just have to move the sections that stick out, because obviously you've cut corners, there's going to be 2 flaps that overlap each other. You can cut them out, but I just tend to leave them in. And it should just look like that. And now we're ready to pour this in here. Perfect mixture, here we are. So we just pour it all in here. Make sure it goes to all of the edges. And you've got to use the children's least favourite kitchen utensil, the spatula, because it helps you get every single last bit out of your mixing bowl. I would recommend, if you're baking with children, to not use this, otherwise they'll be severely disappointed that they won't have anything to lick at the end of their hard baking session. There we go, because it just gets every single bit off it. And that is the best bit about baking. Licking the spoon after. There we go. There we are. And normally I just tap it on the top of a table, and it means that any air bubbles that have been trapped in it will rise to the top, and you'll see them little pop on the top. And it will flatten out the cake mixture as well. So now we're just going to put this in the oven for about an hour. I would check on it about midway through just to make sure, but we'll get to that. Just leave it in there for an hour, and it's surprisingly a long time for a cake because normally it doesn't take over 40 minutes. but because it's quite dense, it needs to cook all the way through. So now going to check it. It's 3/4 of the time in, and as you can see, it's pretty brown, but it is definitely not cooked because you can see here that it's still quite soft. And you can check with a knife or anything, but it's very not done. We've still got 1/4 of an hour left, and we'll check it again. But after that, we just need to keep sticking a knife in, and if it comes out clean, then it's... Here it is. And we're just gonna poke it again with this, and it comes out clean. So that's now done. Here we go. I've left it to cool for about 2 to 5 minutes, and we're just gonna pop it out. Normally, in the loaf tin, I just go around the edges with my knife and make sure it isn't stuck, and then I turn it upside down and tap the back, and then it should just come out very easily. And here is the banana bread. And I'll leave it on the cooling rack just for a little bit. It's still warm, even after leaving it for a little while. But then you can just cut it and enjoy it. So here is our banana bread, just out the oven, and it's just cool enough to cut. And I'm just going to do it in long slices. Here we are. And it's perfectly cooked all the way through, and it's still a bit warm and ready to eat. I'd probably have it with some butter on it while it's fresh out of the oven and quite warm, but you have a nice crust on the outside, and then it's very soft and moist on the inside. Hello everyone, I hope you've all had a go at making the banana bread. It doesn't take too long, only an hour in the oven, that's the longest part, and I did something else while that was cooking. So please do have a go at it, and I think your family will be quite pleased about it. It normally lasts about a week if it can stay that long in your house. For us it goes quite quickly, and you can always add anything you want to it, like chocolate chips, or you could add brownie pieces in it, you could add caramel or nuts, whatever you fancy. Make it your own. I'd say follow the recipe only so much, and then add what you feel like. I'm gonna have it with some coffee now, but if you have any other ideas of what you'd like me to make, please just comment below, and I hope you like it and share it. Oh, Stanley, you're a good boy. Is that your ball? Is it? Oh, is that your ball? Good boy, Stanley. Good boy. Let go. Let go. And yeah, I hope you'll enjoy it, and please like and subscribe if you want any more cooking videos. Bye. Who's a good boy? Oh, Danny. Can we throw it again? Good boy.